Okay.
We're so professional, guys. Hopefully we'll
See,
get a
look
notification.
I put gently and that popped up, that weird thing. Okay, there you are.
Okay.
Oh, look, there we are.
Okay, that looks normal, right?
Are you live?
Yes.
Right now?
This is live. Okay, I guess it looks normal. Let us know if there's any issues with sound. This is not a professional setup today by any means, but we were kind of forced into doing this because my husband is busy here in the church. He took his sister out today for her birthday. That was yesterday. So just let us know if you can hear us okay. Yep.
Hi, Ashley.
It's sideways, she said.
It is sideways.
Oh. So I can't do it that way. All right, let me put it this way.
Thank you, Sarah. Oh, we got to squeeze.
We got to squeeze really in. I hope this doesn't fall. Oh my goodness.
We're pros.
Okay, now it's not sideways. It's through my phone. I could like back out when she's talking. There we go. Okay, we have to do this from my phone because my husband is busy with in the other room. So we're doing this on my phone. So it's very, very it's very bad. Okay. Many of you know this is one of my best friends, Amanda Gander. No, due to contrary opinion, she is not a pastor. Okay, just putting that out there because we're seeing that people are believing that they're calling her a pastor and how wicked it is that she's a woman and she's a pastor. That's a joke, guys. Okay, yeah. She's not a pastor. So she's been up here this weekend, and we decided to just do a really quick live about. She went through infertility, and I'm just going to let her tell her story. I think she's told it. Have you told it?
I have.
Okay, she's told it here on the channel. But I'm just going to let her kind of talk about the first 7 years of trying to have a baby after she was married. And then also since then, what life has looked like. And it's pretty miraculous story if you haven't heard it. So just start from the beginning.
Okay, so it took about 7 years for my husband and I to have our first baby. I was diagnosed with uterine cancer almost immediately after my husband and I got married, and I was really sick. I had a lot of surgeries. I didn't want to take chemo or anything like that. I did do one round of chemo because peer pressure from doctors. And then I was so tired of being sick. I did not get pregnant, was not getting pregnant. Like I didn't even have a positive test even once. So I agreed to a hysterectomy. My husband begged me not to have one. He had a lot of faith. I did not at that point. And I went for my pre-op, and that's where I found out I was pregnant. And so I had my firstborn, Caleb. He was 2 months early. Didn't know why he was early. No answers to that. I was put on bed rest halfway through the pregnancy. And when I gave birth to him, I also went into remission. I had no more cancer, and I've been cancer-free since, so that's a miracle. Mm-hmm. And then after he was born, of course, we were excited. You know, I had been told I would never have babies, so this was very exciting. And that is when we started getting pregnant and losing babies. Again, no answers. I started, actually, Cassandra sent me progesterone cream, and I started using that. And we came to visit Liberty. When was it? In 2020? Was it 20?
How old?
Yeah, Makai was born. Yeah, so in 2020, like right before you know what happened, I had at that point, we had lost, I think, 4.
A lot.
4, yeah. 4 babies, and Pastor McMurtry offered to pray over us, and with the anointing of oil and prayer, I found out I was pregnant a couple months later, and I ended up having my second son, almost a year to the date. that we were prayed over. So that's amazing. Now, he was breech and stuck under my ribs, which is an important thing for later. And I had to have him through C-section because he was stuck. And it was pretty horrific. Like the birthing process was really horrific. And of course I was like, why, Lord?
And I think I had you on here to talk about
Yes,
that.
yes. So
That
I
specific
explained
one.
that in detail. So I'm doing quick catch ups, but I've explained pretty much all of this. But then we did have him, and I got pregnant last year. We found out we were pregnant in November, and then the day after Christmas, I ended up losing the baby. And this time, usually when I would, not that it makes it easier, but usually they were early on. So it was like 5 or 6 weeks. And this time I was 11
Far.
weeks. Yes. And that was very difficult. And because we had, fast forward a bit, because I had been using progesterone cream and then I started getting prescribed when I was pregnant, internal progesterone. And we thought, my midwives, doctors, we all thought that's the problem, low on progesterone. So I was really shocked when we lost the baby, but I was waiting for my doctor to write the prescription. So I was only on the cream at that time. So we thought that was the problem. And then out of nowhere, we found out we were pregnant again. I think it was in February.
So just a couple
Yeah,
months after.
right.
Okay.
And I'd never gotten pregnant that easy in my life or quick. So we were very excited, and things were going good. I had really good doctors. I was on progesterone. I had was waiting for my gender reveal ultrasound that was going to happen, like I think a week away. And then on June 10th, my water broke. I started, hindsight's 2020. I knew I was having contractions, but I was making excuses in my head. My husband was in Japan, and it started getting really intense. So my pastor and his wife came over to watch the boys. And as I was on the phone with my midwife, my water broke. And sorry, I knew as soon as my water broke that I was going to have him. When I was having contractions, I thought, okay, there's going to be something that they can do to stop. But I'm also in Canada, so our healthcare system is really bad. And the ambulance took me, and I was in full labor, literally in between the emergency double doors on a stretcher. And I felt the need to push, and I had told the paramedic, I said, I am not giving birth to my child in between these double doors. And the paramedics were awesome. I could hear her like yelling at a nurse for me. And as soon as they got me in a room, I gave birth to our baby boy Levi. And I just want to say to the people that say babies are a clump of cells, so I was almost 20 weeks and he lived for 27 minutes. Nothing. He was wrapped up. I got to hold him. I saw his heart beating. He was moving a little. He was so tiny. He looked just like his brothers, like identical. He had eyebrows, and I cherish that time that I had with him. But obviously, there's nothing that they can do. However, through all of this, we discovered that my issue is my cervix is weak. And now we know that if, Lord willing, we're ever pregnant again, I'm going to get something called a surgical leap. And that's where they put a stitch in your cervix. And hopefully we'll be able to keep our pregnancy. But just to circle back, Micaiah being breached like that literally saved his life. So as much as I was like so upset with how that birth went, I am so thankful that he was stuck because
Yeah.
I probably would not have him.
No,
So
absolutely, yeah. So that is an important detail, but do you know how many losses so far that you've had
so I've
with
been
all of them?
so I've been pregnant 8 times.
Wow.
So 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's important too when it comes to talking to a woman about loss because every baby, every loss is a baby, and it doesn't matter if you're 8 weeks, it doesn't matter if you're 6 weeks, it doesn't matter if you're 11 or were you almost 17
No,
with Levi?
I was almost 19
Oh,
weeks.
wow.
So
Almost halfway through.
that's why I truly at that point I'm like, okay, we're okay.
Oh, me and you both.
Yeah.
And then it took you forever to even tell me, you said, I think my water broke. I'm going to the hospital.
Yeah. I didn't want to tell anyone that I was having contractions because
Yeah.
I was in total denial. Like this isn't happening.
Yeah, it was terrible. So it took you from the time you were married. Did you want a baby from the time you got married?
Yes.
Okay.
When I was a child, I don't think I understood how it worked. I never thought about having a husband. I just wanted children.
Yeah.
So I was ready for babies, but I mean, the Lord's timing is perfect. Hindsight, I look back and I think we had Caleb at the perfect time. Didn't make it easy still though during those 7 years. And of course you get the comments of like, so when are you having a baby, right? And I know people mean well asking those questions, but that is like the worst question you can ask someone
Yeah.
because people don't talk openly with random people that they're struggling with fertility. So
I personally have never experienced infertility, but one of my best friends from childhood, she did for 5 years before she even got pregnant. And then when she did get pregnant, she ended up miscarrying that one. And it wasn't until a year later, into 6 or 7 years of marriage, that she finally was able to conceive her first. Now, since then, they've had a lot. They've had a lot of kids. And so I think it kind of just opened the floodgates and, God started blessing. She did have some miscarriages in there too. But I remember feeling awful because at the time that she's dealing with infertility, I had 2 kids and I got married after her. So she's actively trying to get pregnant. I get married a year or 2 after she gets married. She's been trying this whole time to have a baby. I get pregnant within a month of being married. We have a baby 9 months to the day that we get married. Then we have Jason, 12 and a half months later. So I'm having these babies and I can't help but feel a sense of guilt, because that. And can you talk about just like the feelings no one talks about when you are trying to get pregnant and you keep seeing maybe those close to you or, family members or something, you keep seeing them be able to get pregnant so easily. Does that affect you?
it does. And it's such a roller coaster. And people don't want to talk about all of those things that come with it, but I think it's important to talk about. I would feel happy for certain people. I'll explain that part in a second, but it didn't make it less painful for me. And I did go through seasons of like being jealous, right? Like, and for me, what was even harder was watching some of my unsaved cousins get pregnant and make comments like, "Ugh, I'm pregnant now I can't drink," or like make jokes about drinking the day before they found out. And I battled with my walk with the Lord even. I did have a season where I didn't want to read my Bible. I didn't want to go to church. I'm so thankful that my husband is like, get out of bed. We're going to church. But I was angry with God. I was really angry. And what got me was I was very close with one of my cousins and she found out she was pregnant and she had told everybody in our family not to tell me because she didn't want to hurt my feelings. And it really, like, when I found out, it kind of like hit me that it's okay for me to be sad, but at the same time, she's not able to like celebrate this awesome thing because she's worried about me. So I had to kind of take a look at that and be like, okay, it's okay for me to be sad and happy for somebody else, but I don't want people that I care about and love to not celebrate this awesome life, right? But you do go through those seasons. Like, it's totally normal to be like, I'm not praying, I'm not reading my Bible, which is the wrong thing to do. That's never the right answer.
And then too, just as a word of caution, okay, to those of us that are fertile mortals, okay, and I think we kind of take it for granted when we can get pregnant so easily, and God blesses us with all these babies. You need to be really careful, I think, considering those that aren't able to get pregnant.
Yeah.
When it comes to things like complaining, like, oh, I'm not ready for another one. Oh, I just had a baby a year ago. I'm not ready for this. And just, I guess, put it out there that those words can really hurt someone else.
Yeah. I also think, though, and this is for me, I think for my closer friends, I always tell them that, like, it's okay. I think there's like a right way to say, like, I'm not ready, or like I'm afraid that I'm pregnant, right?
Because you do have fears. Can I handle another one?
Yeah.
Am I going to be overwhelmed?
But then there's a way to say it. And I have heard people be like, oh, another one, or I wish I didn't get pregnant. I'm like, okay. Something that Sarah actually said yesterday that was really great for people, trying to support somebody through a loss, is that, like, you don't have to fix them. You don't have to say something to like make it better. You can just sit with them and pray with them and let them be sad. You don't have to fix it. And I thought that was a great thing to say, because oftentimes when people are trying to say something to encourage you, like, well, at least they're not going to suffer. That always, like, now I can kind of like laugh and just shake my head, but it's like, yeah, I know. And it's great that they're with the Lord. I love knowing that I will one day get to be with my babies, but I want them here with me right now. Right. So it's like, I get it. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. So what are some phrases people say that they mean to be helpful, but they're really not? And I'm going off of like when I've experienced loss, such as my dad and, one of my closest friends dying. At least they're in heaven now. At least they're not here to suffer. Yeah. This is such a sinful world. At least they never have to deal with temptation or anything again. And it's like, yeah, these things are true factually, but that doesn't help because the pain and the grief is still there.
Yeah.
And you're still going through this loss and you're still going to miss that person. And as long as you're alive on the earth, you're going to miss them. So even though it might sound like spiritual, it's not helpful.
Or, saying like, I guess the Lord just didn't see fit for you to have a baby right now. And I understand, absolutely, the Lord opens and closes the womb. But I think we have to understand we live in a fallen world and bad things happen, because there are people that are living really sinful lifestyles that still get pregnant. And I don't think the Lord is like, I'm going to bless you with this child because you're doing so great. Like,
right.
A child is a blessing, but it's not a measure of like how good you are either.
Yeah. There's been some pretty awful parents that are able to get pregnant every year.
Yep.
And there have been instances where, yes, God did close the womb in the Bible. Stories we read, that's how we know God opens and closes the womb. But there might just be different reasons for why he does so, and sometimes it's hard not to get into the rut of and I went through this, like when my dad died. Why did God take him? He's such a great husband and is such a great dad to us, when there's these like druggies sitting in prison.
Yep.
Or like these people, like these rapists or these child molesters sitting in prison. Why can't they die? Why did my dad have to die? And I think it's something that goes through our heads. And it's okay to question why. I'm not saying don't ever question why. But that's just, I think, as carnal people, that's what's going through our heads, right?
I'm reading what Julia said. Something I struggle with is not meeting them as babies, being able to watch them become who they were going to be. Because in heaven, they're going to already be that person God meant them to be. That
That's
is
true.
really hard.
And that's why there's
Yeah.
different levels to the grief too, because from the time that you get those, I don't think men will ever understand this, only moms will, but from the time you get that positive pregnancy test, you love that baby and you love that person that they're going to be.
Yep.
You know, and then you suddenly you start thinking of names and you start thinking of like different milestones in life. And then when all of that is ripped away, you know, and you lose that dream, I guess, of who they are and who they're going to be, it is really tough for women to process, for sure.
You sent me a little blue truck after I lost Levi, and it's just a simple little blue truck, and that's where we have his urn now. And you wrote, I'm sure he would have loved trucks just like your boys do. And that, of course, I bawled, but it meant so much to me because recognizing that baby as a person is also so important.
Yeah, because we do live in a world that downplays human life.
Yep.
You know, and it is just a clump of cell, which it's not. It's a living, breathing human being. And so just to acknowledge that that life was there,
Yeah.
you know, I think is really important. And that's why with a lot of my friends that have gone through even, you know, miscarriage, I want them to have some memento.
Yeah.
Is that it? Memento? Yeah. I want them to have a trinket or something to remember their baby by, because that's one of the things that brought me healing when I had my 2 really bad miscarriages. That's what really helped, just having something, you know, with like the date that I lost them or the birthstone, just to remember them by. So I think that helped. What are some things that people did that helped you through these times? And you just mentioned one, but what about your immediate support system there in Canada? Because obviously your
Yeah.
friends here in America can't be with you in Canada.
Just that, and like what Sarah said, none of my friends, I have wonderful friends. I never felt like pressured to like, you know, give feedback. I could just be sad. Nobody was like asking me questions. They allowed me, even with pictures. I know
I wanted to see.
I know Cassandra well. We're very similar in a lot of ways, and I asked if she wanted to see his pictures, and she's like, yes, but she never asked me
No,
to.
I waited for you to offer.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, is just letting them come to you. And it's the same thing with like when you're struggling even to get pregnant, right? I think being really careful about asking questions, like,
Yeah.
you know, if you notice somebody that you know wants a baby but hasn't gotten pregnant yet, like asking, so are you trying or are you waiting? They can be innocent questions, but you know, a lot of women, well, every woman that deals with fertility issues, whether that's even conceiving or losing babies, are sitting with a lot of grief and pain, and they may not always show it. I like laugh and smile when I'm nervous or sad, so I could look completely fine, and a question like that could literally make me fall apart. So
Because too, when you're going through infertility, every month, you know, your dreams are kind of crushed when you don't get that positive. And like I said, the longest I've ever had to try to get pregnant, actively really just praying and wishing and wanting, was after my miscarriage with Kelly. And it took me about before Kelly, my miscarriage before Kelly. And it took me like 3 months to get pregnant with Kelly. That's literally the longest it's ever taken me. So, I think for women that are trying every month and they're not getting that positive, for someone to ask, oh, are you trying to have a baby? It's just like a dagger, right, in your heart. And like I said, I know this because some of my best friends have gone through this, family members are going or have gone through this. So that's the only reason that I know, because they've told me that.
it does hurt. And this might sound weird, but I know people who get it will get it. It's not that anyone's pressuring you to have babies, but like there's this like weird sense of pressure when everybody's having babies around you. And so it's not only like you want this so bad, you want to be a mom so bad, but then you also feel, I don't know, I'm trying to find the word, like almost like less than. I know that other people aren't thinking this, but you can think that yourself, that like you're somehow a failure or you're not good enough or whatever. All of these thoughts come to your head, right? And that's hard. And then, I mean, I have a wonderful husband, but I had that worry too. Like, I'm letting him down. Does he regret marrying me? Which I've talked to this about him like long after we had our first child, and he's like, why would you even think that? But those are the real thoughts, right? Does he regret marrying me because, you know, we're not having babies, I'm not giving him babies? So all of those thoughts are very like normal and real, and people don't think about that, right? And then you think like, are people judging me right now, right? Or they
Well, do you think too, okay, so we are both Baptist, we're IFB, and we're in a culture where we consider, because we're Christians and because Baptists especially, it's a fundamental of being a Baptist, you have big families, right? Like you know, you homeschool your kids and you go to a Baptist church and you have dress standards and you have big families. So do you feel like even in our culture, there is more pressure
yeah.
to get pregnant, to have a lot of kids?
Yes. And comments I've received before I had her first, like a woman would say something, well, you'll understand once you have kids. And then after having kids, well, you only have one, so you don't understand. Or like, oh, just wait until you have more than one. And sure, it's innocent to them, but it's so like, yeah, well, if I could, I'd have 10. So, you know, kind of like you never are going to measure up, right? And a lot of it is in your head because the majority of people are not thinking this, but like you do feel like less than, or like people kind of like you don't have permission to feel tired or busy because you only have one or you only have two. Somebody else has 6, so why would I have a reason to be like, oh, I'm so tired, right? It's all of these things are normal and what you think of.
Sarah, are you in the chat still? Do I have any moderator that's in the chat right now? She wants 10 kids because she wants 10 kids. You know, so that's why she wants 10 kids.
I always wanted 10 kids.
I don't think she's gonna have 10 kids now.
No,
but
I mean, I'm 40, so it's probably not going to happen. But you know what? Before I was even saved, I wanted 10 kids. I always wanted a lot of children. So no, it's not. And I was not to that person. I was not raised in a church. I was not raised Baptist. So there are women who want lots of kids. And it's not.
It's not even. I mean, obviously, it is in the Baptist culture a lot.
It's common, but
it's not. There are people that aren't saved that want a lot of kids.
Yeah,
so
like I love children. Being a mom is my favorite thing in the world, and I've always loved children. The idea of not being able to have kids, and actually I'm glad.
Someone said you look 20.
Thank you.
It's her skincare. She's great at skincare.
I do like my skincare, but I will say this, you know. Oh, now I forget what I was going to say.
I can't remember what you're saying.
We were talking about 10 kids and having lots of children.
Now you're 40.
Oh, yeah. Something someone said to me, and this was, again, before I was saved, because I got saved about a year after I was married, but even in that year, I was upset about not having babies, and I had a girl at work look at me, and she's like, you know that you're more than just a baby maker, right? And I was like, yeah, but what's wrong with wanting that so bad, right? So the world does often, why would you want 10 kids? Why would you want kids? There are people who love children, okay?
Yeah, and it is a big responsibility, and I'm all for, take care of the kids that you have. Like Amanda said, if that's one child, if that's two, if that's five, if that's eight, if that's 10, see it as the responsibility that it is. And you really are giving up a lot of self when you have children. But some of us want to do that. Some of us, that's our choice.
Yeah.
Sometimes you reach a point where you're like, I think this is good. I think God has told me this is a good number. I don't see anything wrong with natural methods that will not abort a fertilized egg. I've said that often on this show. That's just my personal stance. Sometimes, I would rather you take care of 5 kids very well than have 15 and not take care of them. So at the end of the day, you are responsible for a lot of how that child turns out, when it comes to, obviously none of us are perfect, but we set the tone for how their entire life is going to go, whether or not they're going to have trauma from growing up, whether or not they're well fed, taken care of, given a good education. It's a huge responsibility. So yes, you definitely need to count the cost, but some of us have, and we're doing a decent job raising our kids. So,
I think also touching on that, I always said 10 kids, and then I had Micaiah, who is just,
He's a tornado.
He's me.
He's like Hannah.
So yeah, no, he's totally my personality. And I think there's a reason why I don't have 10 kids, because again, it's okay to like want a specific number, but I think it is also important to be aware. And I have had a conversation with friends who feel bad. And I've heard pastors use people with fertility issues as a way to like guilt women into just keep going. As somebody with fertility issues, somebody who adores children, I would rather you say, okay, I have 2 and I need to pause right now so I can be the best mom to these, and then continue. I have no problem with that. I'm not like, well, you should just keep having babies because I can't, right?
Yeah, right. And isn't it kind of annoying, though, being a woman with fertility issues, when pastors will use you as an example to put pressure on other people's families that they have no jurisdiction over?
Yeah. And I do have opinions about like birth control. I'm a natural family planning lady, right? Especially hormonal because of what they do.
Yeah.
But I think it's perfectly acceptable to know your limit and be cautious. And I do not like the manipulation of like, you should just, count yourself blessed that you can have these babies, and the mom's got like 4 under 5 and she's
pulling her hair out.
Yeah.
About to kill herself. And it does happen. There are moms that kill themselves because the pressure is so great. So you got to count the cost when it comes to any of this. She asked you out of curiosity, why didn't you adopt? There are so many children who are in need of loving parents.
Okay, so I'm actually glad you asked this, because I had thought about adopting. My husband and I had thought about that. I won't get into it. I did not have the best upbringing. I even struggled when I was pregnant with Micaiah. I was afraid.
I remember this, yeah.
Because of the things that I was told, I was afraid, like, am I going to be able to love him as much? Childhood trauma. We looked at adoption, and I don't know. I know people who adopt. My stepmom's adopted, and I loved her mom. Her mom loved her, like her adoptive mom. I don't know that this would be true, but I feared that after having my first, if I adopted, that I would treat the adopted child differently. And just even the thought of that scared me. I would not want that baby to feel less than. That aside too, in Canada, adopting is way out of our budget.
That's what Shara just said. Yeah, she said it's very difficult to adopt in Canada.
Yeah, you're talking like a cheap adoption would be $100,000.
Whoa.
And we just don't have that. And that was upsetting to me because when I thought we were never having children in that 7-year span, I did want to adopt. I was open to that, and we just couldn't afford it. And so, yeah, that's why. And I'm not saying that people can't have kids and then adopt and love them the same. I just didn't, I didn't want to chance that happening, because I never would want a child to feel less than or unloved.
Right. And every situation is going to be different too. She's just telling her side.
Yeah, that's
there
me.
might be parents or moms where that's not an issue, you know, and I know moms personally who have, they were told they would never have children. They adopted 2 and they got pregnant. And so they have 3 kids now, and they love all those kids equally. And if you ask any parent that's adopted kids, they're going to say they love, you know, that's just a fear based off childhood trauma and things that happen. So, yeah, she's Canadian. She's Canadian.
It's like everybody knows, they're like, oh, you're Canadian.
Yeah.
I know.
She's Canadian. It's a little bit harder there. So can we touch just a little bit about how do you continue to live life and be joyful while going through all this pain? Because I still know it's painful for you even now. So we were talking about it the other day. While you had a time where I let you open up to me, left you alone, but still checked in on you, right? The few days after Levi came. You took your time to grieve. You did grieve. And you grieved hard. But grief is not, that's when you think of Amanda Gander, you don't think of you living under a cloud of grief. You know, you're happy, you're joyful, and you enjoy life, you live life, you love on your kids that you have, Micaiah and Caleb. What are some things you've done to kind of accomplish that mindset over just living in perpetual grieving and sorrow and loss?
My boys got me through it. So a lot of you know that when I lost Levi, my husband was in Japan for work. So I was alone with the kids, and we don't have family close by. For me, as hard as it was for my husband and me, it was almost a blessing because I had to get up. I had to take care of my babies. And again, I have a great support system in friends, and I just, you know, as much as it hurts, I just poured into my kids. That helped me. And I mean, I'm trying to think of like, because I didn't have a loss before I had Caleb. So what would I do? If I think just like pouring into like whatever you like, pour into your husband, pour into the other things, take the time to be sad, because there were moments.
Yeah.
I know that my friends could tell I would talk, my voice sounded different right after, but I tried to remember, don't push God away, because I had done that before, bring him closer.
Yeah.
Pour into my kids and just take the time. Instead of pushing it out of my head, if Levi popped into my head, I would just think about him. Think about what he looked like. Look at pictures. My oldest, Caleb, is just so amazing. When we got Levi's urn back, I had just redone the room, and he's like, can Levi be in our room? I'm like, yes. And the idea of, I know it's just a memento. He is not those ashes. He is with the Lord in heaven, very thankful for that. But just even the idea of him being, all the 3 boys are in a room, right? You can make like a shadow box with like the little memories, and just acknowledging the life is really helpful. Yeah. And I am just a positive person in that way. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be sad, and then I'm just going to get up and push forward.
And there's going to be times where you're going to have a bad day.
And I do.
Yeah. You're going to have a bad day, and you're going to cry a lot. And that's totally part of grieving.
Yeah.
Especially as like milestone dates.
Yes. because his due date is
Yeah.
approaching, and thinking about it is hard. But I think it is important though to grieve, because something that is hard also with loss, and I think this is any loss, and even getting a negative test is the whole world going on as normal.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're frozen. And you're like, why is everybody acting normal? This is like the worst day of my life. That's really difficult.
What is some advice that you would give to those struggling? First off, what is some advice you would give to friends of those who are struggling with infertility right now? What are some ways that they can help them? What are some things not to say? What are some things not to do? What are some things to do?
So, like Sarah said to me yesterday, which I thought was great, was letting them talk to you and not trying to fix them. Not trying
That's
to.
me. I had to work on this through the years. I'm not as bad now, but I'm a fixer. And so I
fixer,
want to fix the problem. I can be going through something horrific and I'm able to deal with it and get through it. But when I see someone I love going through it, I want to fix the problem. Like, I want you to be happy. I don't want you to be going through this pain. I don't want you to be going through this sorrow. And so I want to take all the pain away. And so it's really hard for me. I've learned that sometimes you just need to be with someone in their grief.
Yep. And that's so true. I'm also a fixer. So I struggle not and it doesn't mean like it's nice, right? It's loving. It's I want to see you happy, I want to fix you, but it's important to remember that even just like simple gestures without even saying anything, right? So if you have a friend that is dealing with fertility issues and they opened up, like, I got a negative again, drop off flowers, don't say anything, a meal or whatever, right? Anything, or like, hey, you want to go out for a coffee? Don't even bring it up. Let them bring it up if they want to, right? Listen to them. After a loss, my church brought so much food. Like, I felt a little insulted because my very picky Caleb was like, this is awesome. I'm like looking at him like, okay. But and what everybody did for me, with Levi especially, was like, just drop off and leave, right? And then I had a few people like, hey, do you want me to come and clean your house? And I'm like, no, thank you, because I'm OCD with it. And it's like, okay, right? And then just small check-ins, right? Hey, how you doing? Or I'm thinking about you, I'm praying for you, not prying, right? Because sometimes you don't want to talk about it, right? And I feel very blessed to have the church and the friends that I do, because I think that really helped me with Levi too. Nobody was like pushy. It was like, here's a bunch of food, here's some flowers, you know. I think
I covered that in my miscarriage video too, and I mentioned that. Fern, I'm not going to really address that right now. It has nothing to do with the topic. So I think if that ever happened, we would cross the bridge when it came to it. I'm just going to say that as a mom, you never stop loving your kids, you know, and our kids might do some things that we would deem horrible and sinful. And as a mom, though, you might have to set boundaries in place, you know, especially if you have younger kids at home still. If you you hold a certain belief, whether that comes down to your kid becoming a murderer or your kid robbing a bank or something. But you're still always going to love that child no matter what.
You don't just stop loving.
Yeah, you're never going to stop loving, even if you have to put certain boundaries in place. So I'm just going to leave that there because it really has nothing to do with the topic at hand. So when it comes to those who are struggling with infertility, what are some words of advice to give to them? And also, should they try to hide the fact that sometimes things are painful for them, whether that comes down to should they feel guilty over not being excited, you know, when someone announces a pregnancy, or should they let people know this is really hard for me? Like, how would you deal with that?
Well, first, I don't think there's any shame in not feeling excited and feeling jealous. That's okay. I do think when it comes to it comes down to the person. If it's like your best friend, like I would feel comfortable being excited for you and then telling you this is really hard for me, right? You really got to be careful though, because if somebody's really sensitive too and you say like this is really hard for me, they might be like you're trying to steal my joy, right? But I feel like, you know, it's such a taboo situation that people are like, well, you should just be happy for other people. And it's like, I can be happy for you and sad for me at the same time. And it is normal to just be outright like jealous in your head, being like, why her? But I think it's important to take that to the Lord right away. Don't do what I did, because it hurt me more to be like, well, then I'm not praying. Like, it just made things so much worse. It's normal when you're dealing with grief, to have moments where you're like, I don't want to pray, I don't want to read my Bible, I don't want to go to church. That is the wrong thing to do, because I have never had a day where I'm like, I don't feel like going to church, where I push myself and go, I regret coming. I'm always like, I'm so glad that I came.
Right. Yes, this is a Christian channel, just throwing that out there. So we're going to be giving our advice and our opinions based off our belief in the Bible and what sins are, what sins aren't. So yeah, you're going to hear this is a Christian channel.
Yeah.
So I don't know why you're acting surprised at some of the stuff we're saying, but once again, we're going to move on. So, Jay Hildebrand said, women who have had a miscarriage or lost a child know how sorry our Father must have felt. Know the sorrow.
Yeah.
Know the sorrow our Father must have felt when he lost Jesus.
Yeah.
Nothing like losing a child. That is for sure. The sorrow. Yeah, we got it.
Julia, I mean, and it's totally normal, right? Don't feel bad you already feel bad enough, right? Don't add, I feel guilty for how I feel on top of it, because it is normal. A lot of people don't talk about it. It is normal to feel like that.
And aren't you already kind of dealing with, I know I felt like this, I've only had 2 miscarriages, but I know I felt like this when I lost the baby, like, this is my fault. Like, I can't even grow a baby. What is wrong with me? Like, is there something wrong with me?
Oh, I cleaned the bathroom before I got a positive pregnancy test with Levi. I cleaned the bathroom with bleach. And I kept asking my midwife, and out of this, like, Levi is like a hero, because if we have another baby, it's because of him.
Right.
That we figured out. But I had awesome doctors, and he's like, this is not your fault. This is nothing you did. And my midwife said the same thing. She's like, the bleach is not what did this, right? But it's normal to think like, oh, I was doing the boys' room while I was pregnant. I lifted the mattress. It's that, right? I shouldn't have been bending over giving Micaiah a bath that night, right?
Yeah.
It's always that.
And I want to say too, I'm just really glad that we live in the generation we live in, because they were able to figure out what was wrong, right? Because we were just talking about, imagine centuries ago, women just losing babies constantly.
Yeah.
Not having any idea what was happening.
When I think about some women, it's literally like a vitamin deficiency. They like take, or even progesterone sometimes is enough, right? And I think about all those women who lost their babies, and obviously it's prevalent enough. We see it fertility issues in the Bible a lot. So, that's really
Sarah's a good question.
How do you handle attending church in those early days after loss? Oh, I lost it. Do you treat it like postpartum? Yeah, okay. That's another really important thing. All loss is hard, but once you get past 6 weeks, you've literally given birth, right? And people forget that. You do need to rest. I would absolutely not recommend, like, if you have a loss on a Tuesday, don't go in on Wednesday and don't put that pressure on yourself. Like, your body is
This
literally
goes for
healing.
loss and childbirth, like both.
Yes.
Postpartum.
That's why I'm saying, like, when you're miscarrying, you're like giving birth. See, in Canada, with Levi, he lived, okay, for those 27 minutes. I watched him, right? But in Canada, until they're 23, they're considered stillbirths, right? And so that mentality makes women kind of forget, like, no, I had my water broke, I had contractions, I had to push, like, you know. And though an earlier loss, you might not have to go through what you feel is an intense labor, you still labored, right? And you still have postpartum, and so you do need that healing time.
For sure. So yeah, was it awkward for you coming back to church right after, especially Levi? You know?
Yes, because some of the people didn't know, right? And of course, anyone who's had any sort of babies, I had just started showing with Levi too. And so you don't just go back to normal after. And I had a few women be like, how's everything going? And not knowing. And then having to explain it to people, that's like very difficult. But the other people in church that didn't know were, again, very supportive. Just a hug, praying for you. And I was just thankful to like be there.
Probably the first week was the hardest, wasn't
Yes.
it? It always is, kind of the awkwardness
Yeah.
of
Right? And then, of course, those same feelings, like I said, it's normal to like have those feelings, like my body failed and stuff, right? But it's a weird feeling. Like, I almost went there and felt like I let everybody down because everybody was so excited, right? And yes, I know they weren't disappointed in me, but it was that feeling like everybody was excited for this new baby. And
how did Caleb take it? And that's another thing too. How do you explain it to siblings? Because I know when I lost the baby before Chloe, Tommy was very young, and I went into his room a couple days after it happened, and he was crying in his bed, going to sleep. And it broke my heart so much because he's like, I wanted a baby sister, a baby brother. It broke my heart so much. We did not tell the kids until I was like in month 3 with Chloe.
Right.
Because we wanted to get the ultrasound first and make sure everything was okay. Because I'm like, I can't. It broke my heart, seeing him cry. So how do you handle that? How did you handle that with Caleb, telling him?
so Caleb is so wise beyond his years, and he was praying so much for well, he wanted a boy, then he wanted a girl, then he wanted a boy, but he knew that we lost the baby in December, and then when we lost Levi, he asked me why God answers prayers and then takes it back. And that like killed me. And of course he would ask that question because he's such a big thinker. And so I explained to him, I said, yes, the Lord answers prayers, but again, we live in a fallen world. So God didn't kill my baby. It just happens sometimes. And I'm thankful that, Levi is with the Lord. But, kids grieve too. So I just said, I explained to him what happened when I came home, and I asked him, like, do you want to talk about anything? And right away, he didn't want to talk. And I said, if you have any questions, you can ask me. And then when I was putting him to bed, that's when he asked that question. And then, I think it's based on, you have to know your children, age appropriate things to explain to them and how they'll take it, but also understand that they're grieving too, and making sure that they know they can ask you anything. But like, Caleb is determined that we're gonna have another baby because Micaiah must know how annoying it is to have a younger brother or sister.
That's a funny twist on it.
As for the little ones though, like Micaiah, it was hard for me because he kept touching my belly and going, hi, baby. And it took him a while for me to be like, no, there's the baby's with Jesus now. And he's like, no, the baby's in there. So that is difficult. Yeah.
I know Julia said, Zeke said he was so mad at the situation because now we don't get two babies and it made mommy sad. Yeah.
It's hard.
And I don't think as parents too, we need to shield our kids from things that happen. They need to know, I mean, I don't want them to be jaded as they're growing up, but you also don't want to put them in this bubble where like they think nothing bad is ever going to happen. You know?
Yep.
So I've always been open with my kids about when I'm going through hard times, when I'm upset, when I'm sad. You know, I don't think that's a bad thing for them to see you cry. Or even though I'm not a big crier, I like cry once a year.
They see me cry all the time.
Yeah. Mommy's crying again.
They just laugh because I'm a crier. I cry when I'm happy, sad, so. But yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you that they need to know how to navigate the world, right? They need to be able to see that. But it is hard because children ask the most like raw questions. But yeah, and when, you know, I told Caleb Levi was a boy, he's like, I knew it. Everybody else said I was having a girl, but
I'm always wrong. So I maybe it's because I want you to have a little girl. So
I know
you might always be a boy mom, but I know you had the opposite experience at my house this week because it's like almost all girls.
I loved it. I painted nails.
She did, yes.
I got to hear all the cool words.
Oh yeah. You had your ear talked off when you were doing your makeup, and
I loved it.
all the girl feels in my house. So, but anyways, any last words for those going through in the painful process of infertility or miscarriage or loss, or, you know, what about those that think they're never going to get pregnant? Do you have any advice for them?
I thought I was never going to get pregnant, but I have heard so many testimonies of people literally like 18 years, 20 years.
Wow. Well, my friend Ashley that's on here quite often, it was over a decade, I believe. For her.
And I've heard that so many. And listen, if you have the parts to have a baby, it's never out of the question, right? Like if you are still cycling, it is possible. I mean, I just don't stop praying. I'm a firm believer in, I don't know if this is like a cliche sentence, but like the power of prayer. But I've seen it work in my life, and we see it all throughout scripture too, right? Barren woman conceiving children. But also to take the time to allow yourself to be sad about it. Don't be like, oh, I should just appreciate what I have. Because yes, that's true. Appreciate, the season that you're in, but like also allow yourself to be sad. If, you only have that one line again, like be sad about it.
Yeah.
And
Ashley, can you put the name of that book in that you recommended to me that helped you when you were infertile? They have a precious little baby girl now. And so God did answer her prayer, but yeah, she's just a few years younger than me. So it's up to God if they're going to have another one. But God opened her womb for their precious baby that they have now, Hannah's Hope. That is it. Hannah's Hope is one that she recommended to me for those struggling with infertility. That might be something that you can look into. It's just a cheap little book. For me, books actually help. I don't know about you, but I love books. I devour books. Encouraging words, that's stuff like that. When I'm going through things, that helps me. So if there's any good recommendations, if any of you know any other good recommendations, please put it in the comments. Go ahead and give this a thumbs up if you haven't. We had almost over 30 at one time watching the whole time. So thanks for jumping on this impromptu live. But any final words? And just keep praying for her, because I obviously want her to have another baby, especially now that we know the problem, Yeah. And sometimes too, I am not against, if you have an issue, as a woman, I am not against fixing that.
Me either.
you know.
Because
and-
God is still in control of that, right? I just say, like, for those of you who maybe know me on Facebook or leave a comment, if you want me to pray for you, I'll pray. If you have questions, I'm, you know, I'm a firm believer in that the Lord uses everything for good if you give it to Him. And, you know, if things that I've gone through that are difficult can be encouraging to others, I would love to be able to be that for someone.
I've often thought that about things I've gone through. If I had never lost anyone that was close to me, how could I then help those in ministry who have lost them?
Right.
If I've never gone through a miscarriage, how would I know what it's like to go through that miscarriage?
Right.
You know, and I try to look at hard times in my life as a tool to help me minister to other people. Is kind of how I've always looked at it. So, but yeah, definitely keep
Thank
praying
you,
for her.
Ashley.
Keep praying for her.
Oh,
and
thank you, Sheer.
Pray
Thank you,
for
everyone
her.
I missed.
Yep.
Sorry, I
Hey,
keep
Nicole.
cutting you off.
Pray for her as she heads home today, that she'll be safe. And we look forward to her next visit. And I'm glad that you got to do this impromptu with me. So,
You're welcome.
all right,
Now
guys.
to drive.
Yes, now she's got to drive. I want to say goodbye. So we will see you guys later. Bye.
Bye. I almost made a silly face because I was like gonna